7 o'clock, so we're going to call our meeting to order. And we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we'll start with citizens' comments. We are now in a scheduled time on our agenda for public comments. The Board of Education wishes to hear your thoughts and concerns. All speakers must have signed in with their address and contact information. Individual speakers may speak for up to 3 minutes, while individuals representing groups of people may speak for up to 5 minutes. Although the board may ask clarifying questions, please be reminded that the board cannot respond directly to any questions or comments made this evening. The president shall have the authority to request that the superintendent ensure that the appropriate staff member follow up with the individual regarding the information or concerns presented during public comments. So our first public commenter is Kelsey Burkhammer.
Good evening, everybody. So I think Amy is gonna cover one of the things that I wanted to ask about. So I'll save my time and just talk about one thing. So I just wanted to throw out the idea that, or I'd like to understand better, I guess, what the thought process is behind deciding to do this synchronous learning. I understand that in an ideal world, that probably is the best way to handle all this. It probably feels most like being in an actual classroom. But of course, this is not an ideal world, and they're not going to be in actual classrooms. They're going to be home or in some like crazy patchwork of childcare options, where they may or may not be able to sit at a certain time in front of the screen, or have a parent there to facilitate at exactly when the teacher says they need to be there. I know that's true for my family, and I think everybody in this room and every family in the district is doing what they have to do to make it work. And so I just want to ask you guys to consider providing options for, if you can do both, great, do both. And for the families that are able to, sit there next to their child and make sure they're there when they're supposed to be there and exactly when the teacher wants it to be, great. But for everybody else, could we also offer recorded sessions that can be facilitated whenever it works with the schedule, who's actually going to be there handling facilitation of learning. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Our next commenter, Kelly Kildan.
Hi, my name is Kelly Kilday, and I'm here speaking on behalf of your many students in the district who are either at risk, including those with IEPs. When I told my son Jack, who's going to be a 6th grader at Brentwood Middle School, that school is going to be virtual, he cried, and he told me that virtual learning does not work for him, as he's not getting the services that he needs to learn, which I understood. And since then, I've been trying to get more information from Dr. Lane, Dr. Yates, Dr. Witterstein, and the communications that are being given to families in the district are very poor, if not anything, regarding how you're going to offer services to those kids, which is completely unacceptable. This afternoon, I received a voicemail from Dr. Lane, who was saying that there aren't plans because they're still consulting to determine those plans, which I find completely unacceptable for my son and those like him. We've had all summer long to come up with plans, and it's time for the families in this school district to know what the plans are and how you're going to educate our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
guess my question was, with the elementary schools, the design process of that, I guess with the scope of the project and everything else that's gonna happen, my question to you is why we're chose one architect already? I would guess a better process would be to get 3 architects, get 3 different schools of thought, and then be able to pick the best school of thought. So my question would be kind of why we're stuck with one, and not that much of a choice to try to get the best product. And that's all I have.
Thank you, John. All right, and then Amy and Leila.
Hi, I'm Amy Layton. I have 2 kids at McGrath, and I just first of all wanted to say thank you for what you guys are doing. I know you guys have been just an amazing board and just through a whole lot this last year, and you guys do a fantastic job. I know that this is like unprecedented at times, and we don't know the answers, and we don't know the right answers, and what exactly to do for our kids. But I just want to say a couple things. First of all, Brentwood, before we knew this was happening, I thought it was going to be, I was kind of like, well, if anybody can do something different, Brentwood can. And when I felt like the tables turned and then there was no negotiation or conversation about unique ways to be able to do school, that gave me pause, and I just didn't understand why. And I do know that there are so many things I don't understand regarding like legal things and whatnot that go into these decisions. So it's not a faulting of anybody, it's just an encouragement of, as we go in making these decisions moving forward, to get these kids back in class for those families that can and want to because they know that is the best for their kid. Like, let's come together as a community and try to figure out creative ways. Whether that's, I mean, it's going to be hard going into the fall clearly and through the winter, but you know, like, I'm just thinking like outdoor classes or something along those. I know our community would come together and try to do this. That being said, I just have a couple specific questions about how things are going to be laid out with traditional and virtual. From what I understand, I have found out that McGrath is going to be supplying the virtual education for the entire district for each grade, if I think that is not true. Okay. So I just want to see, I just want to understand, from what I gathered is that my child was in one particular class, now moved into another because they're in the traditional track. So when they go to school, they will be in another group with the other teachers from McGrath's class who also chose traditional. So basically that class will be bigger. And if that is incorrect, I would like to know just the plan for that, just to assure my kids can have their teacher congruently through the year.
Okay, thank you. All right, that concludes our public comments for the beginning of our meeting. Kate, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Jamie Allen,
Here.
Melissa Nair. Here. Chris Carter.
Here.
Keith Ravenberg.
Here.
Lindsey Spencer.
Here.
Henry Johnson.
Here.
Mark Walmart.
Here.
Right, if I can get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. So that moves us into the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Start with a conversation about reentry planning. First off, teachers were back on Monday, so it was an exciting time for us. We've been keeping them busy with, they've had access in the past weeks to Canvas, but now that they're back, we're providing additional instructional development with Canvas. We had 2 different sessions this week, one that happened already and one that's tomorrow evening that Dr. Kirkhammer is putting on for parent training for Canvas. That's been received well. Students and parents will be able to fully access the Canvas modules by next Tuesday. So that means that the teachers will all have their home pages fully developed, the first week of modules in there, and the parents and students will be able to get in and explore that. One question that we received, and we're vetting that, but we anticipate we can get an answer to this in the next couple of days, is whether we're going to be able to record our Canvas sessions. And I'm getting final clarification from the attorney, but I believe we're going to be able to do that. So we'll send out a communication to that. That kind of answers to whatever degree the question of synchronous versus asynchronous learning, as all the sessions would be archived and recorded. So that would give you the ability, if your child's sick, or if it's not, you don't have the ability to, or you want to sit with them and do a lesson in the evening, you could do that. At the same time, whenever possible, of course, we're encouraging our students to be in those synchronous sessions. So,
How would that affect attendance? Or what are we using to take attendance?
well, it does. It's just campus engagement. You can get a report from that. Side note, we're more concerned about our kids being engaged and active, but DESE has waived attendance requirements during this period, and really it looks like probably likely for the entire year, but definitely while we're out based on COVID. So we'll get out that message soon, but I anticipate we're going to be able to do the recorded sessions. Another thing that I had to check with our attorneys on is whether we would be able to work one-on-one with students in a virtual environment. The answer to that was yes, and it does not. They do not advise doing any form of parent waiver. Parents cannot waive their children's rights, and we have policies in place about interactions between staff and students that fully cover all our expectations. So that's very good news for us, because a lot of our model is going to be, there's going to be, obviously periods of synchronous learning, but there's going to be a lot of time in there that we're going to do small group interventions and one-on-one interventions that would either be driven by the teachers, the TAs, and the paraprofessionals. All of the schools are in the process of handing out supplies both this week and early next week, so that includes any devices, any materials for the class that are going to be needed. So that's all being sent out by the building principals. We are on track to get all our additional devices in. We ordered those months ago. You probably read in the Post-Dispatch, a lot of districts are not getting their devices, are pretty far behind, but luckily we ordered ours early, and everything on delivery day. We currently have enough in-house to give one out to every student, and we have some additional coming for breakages and replacement cycles. We've spent a lot of time, both this summer and recently, looking at creative ways that we could provide interventions for our struggling students, and that could be obviously students with IEPs, it could be students without IEPs. We anticipate that we're going to send out communication to the community on Friday in regards to this. We've got a administrator meeting tomorrow that we're hammering out the very last final details to that, but it is going to be a model that's going to offer small groups of students that are struggling. They'll be identified by data, both current, as we take current NWA data, but also looking at prior years. We didn't want to have to wait a month and to get, NWA data and start making those small groups, but it is going to be a process where in these small groups that we're able to bring them K to 5 originally, but we are also looking at a 6 to 8 option as well to bring them into the buildings, for 1 to 2 hour periods, and we would provide interventions for those students. So details will be coming out of that this week, but we think that could be a good way to further meet the needs of those kids that just aren't doing well or are not fully, working well with the virtual model, or just too struggling, need interventions in general. So that would occur, like I said, it would definitely be at McGrath and Mark Twain, and we're currently looking, and more information to follow, but also having a middle school model of that as well with some of our struggling students. One conversation that we've been having across the county is on metrics and what information can we look at with our ultimate goal, and my ultimate goal is to get students back into school as soon as it's safe to do so. That has been a task that Ed Plus has spearheaded, particularly Matt Goodman, who's been sending a lot of the information, some of which I've shared with board members recently. So we've narrowed it down to a few metrics, things such as new cases per 1,000, transmission rate, looking at a couple other potential metrics, and we're tracking those on a weekly basis and looking at those trends. Ultimately, and the group should have the work done, I anticipate the next couple of weeks in identifying a leveled system that would be connected to those metrics. In other words, a transmission rate of over 1 would equate to red, and that equate, whether you put a color or a name to it, that equates to this. Transmission rate of 0.75 to 1, I'm just throwing these numbers out, but ballpark, 0.75 or below would be green, fully open. So I'll keep you updated on those, and would certainly, share those out as well as those are developed. But that data, there's a lot of great data that's out there. It's starting to trend better. It's a little early to forecast at this point, but there are some positive signs. So we'll continue to track that data in our, like I said, in our ultimate goal to get the kids back into school ASAP. Question has came up. We've been looking at, along with every other district, talking about being able to offer sports and activities. It was actually in the last week, MISHA, the state's activity and sports organization, came out with and approved an alternate spring schedule. And if you want details on it, I shared it with the board, but you can look at it on the website. But the gist of it is the earliest sport that would be offered would be your winter sports, which are typically late November, early December. And then you would do your fall sports in roughly March, April. I don't have it in front of me. It would be an abbreviated season of 7 weeks of competition, practices and 7 weeks of competition. And then you would have your spring season at the last season, and that would go roughly into the first week of July. So there's a lot of positives to this, both from a safety standpoint and this week. IAD and myself met with all the ADs and superintendents from our conference, and we have another meeting scheduled for Thursday, and we would anticipate some form of a communication going out to our parents on Friday in terms of if this is the route we're going to go. Obviously, with the size of our district, it's very important that the whole conference goes together in whatever decision they do, because we need competition. So that's why we've been talking and collaborating. And in that example, I'm specifically talking about sports, but then obviously we do, we've got an opportunity here with also with the MISHA activities, that those would fall in line when we think about things like debate and so forth. We're also pursuing, outside of MISHA sports and activities, the ability to start virtual activities and engaging students as soon as possible for for instance, the principals are talking to the sponsors of their building and coming up with ways, how could you start your activity on a virtual type format so that we can engage kids right away and not wait for, practices to be safe or for students to be able to necessarily come on campus to any degree. So we'll keep you updated on those, but we're really excited about the idea that we can really connect and continue to kind of keep our kids engaged with the district, not just on a instructional basis, but also with some activities as well. We've also been working on the feeding our students while they're gone from our campuses. So we will be offering a 5-day-a-week daily breakfast and lunch. So the students will come in, and at the same time they'll get breakfast and lunch, and they can either pick it up. And as I talked briefly about, we have a new app that we're rolling out, and that information will be going out. It's called Nutraslice. And so the students will be able to go on their app, and every day there'll be 4 entrees to choose from, beverage, etc. And they can pick that, and then they can choose either pickup or delivery. And so here in the Brentwood area, they can either pick it up at the middle school, or our food service director, Lauren Stebbins, and she's got a couple volunteers helping her out with delivery here within Brentwood. And then for our VIC students, we have a twice-a-week delivery that VIC is assisting us with. So they will get, that will be on Monday and Wednesday. So on Monday and Wednesday, they get 2 lunches, 2 breakfasts. And then on Wednesday, delivered to their home, they would get 3 lunches, 3 breakfasts of their choice. Obviously, they'd still be able to do those through the app. So VIC is going to help us out on those routes, and Dr. Truckhammer spearheaded that. So I appreciate that work. I believe that was the re-entry update. Any questions or?
Yeah, Brian, we had talked about, maybe you mentioned this, but in terms of just assessing all the students' needs as they come back, right? We're coming off of a crazy spring. And we had originally mentioned some diagnostic tool outside. I did not think it was NWEA. What are we doing with that?
Alex, you can talk to NWEA. I mean, that is
what we're using?
That is how we're going to use it, and we've been communicating with them about the virtual option.
Yeah, there's an out-home. We'll be rolling out a way for kids to take it at home. That's going to. I do think we need to get kids kind of settled into the new campus environment. So I would imagine the first, second week of September we'll be able to kick that out, and we'll get those results back. But in the meantime, teachers are still going to be doing their, to the extent that they can, running records to get reading levels on our kids. We can even do some sort of just math assessments from our math textbook. So I mean, at the elementary level, we should be able to get some data, but we do kind of we really hold on to that NWEA data, because that's all about how that works. But then we'll really have an idea of which kids are missing what, and as Dr. Lane mentioned, we'll start bringing those kids into the building. We'll even be able to bring some kids in before we get that NWEA data to work on those interventions.
So is the cycle time, I mean, we're compressing it then, or no? Yeah, I mean, so we'll have, I guess my concern is, right, we march through May, right? We're doing virtual, and kids, I mean, we were a very different form of contact. So how, I guess for me, having some confidence that the sooner the better, right? That we're doing these assessments and finding out those that really are further behind. I mean, we have the existing ones that I'm assuming we know, but the others is.
The NWA data really is that standardized test, our data that we'll hang our hat on. With school starting on the 27th, we'll have 2 days then we've got a full week, and then we've got that Labor Day week. So I mean, it's truncated at that beginning. So I would imagine that week right after Labor Day, we'll be able to roll this out. The good thing about NWEA is those results come back overnight. So while the whole district may not be done, as we get pockets of kids testing, teachers will start receiving that data as early as the second week of September.
And that's something that you all are working with the teachers and helping to
We would,
that?
yes. right now, we're trying to bite off the canvas apple, and then we'll take NW.
I guess my question is, don't we already know, I'm not saying the NWA isn't good. I know that's what we use, I've heard great things about it, but we have NWEA data from back in the spring. So we
Well,
already,
winter, yes.
right, so I think, shouldn't we already know who those kids are now? And can't we start there and then use what we're, with the NWEA data that we're going to be putting out again at the beginning of the school year and be able to start identifying the kids before the NWA data comes back?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah, that's-
articulated that much better than I tried to get it. We kept data, we have what they're called data walls that our teachers have kept even throughout the virtual learning in the spring. So, yeah, we have a pretty good idea of the kids that we know might need additional supports. All I'm saying is that NWA data will either confirm that or it might catch more kiddos that we didn't notice.
But yeah, that's from the start, the grade level teams are going to, be identifying, they've already identified them, but in terms of setting them up to provide more of that small group and one-on-one interventions and supports, the principals and the teachers could name, the vast majority of those students that, struggled at that time last year. And so, we're not gonna let that slow us down, but it'll just be helpful to triangulate that data, and then, like Alan said, be another net going back to where I believe Jamie was going with it. There could be some kids that maybe weren't struggling in the past, but due to the virtual aspect of it last year, may need some additional support. I think it's a fair assumption.
So we'll start with the core kids that we know already, and that could be kids with IEPs, or that could be additional IEP kids that we'll be looking at and trying to address immediately. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Seems to me that, yeah.
Do you mean coming into, are we
Right,
talking about coming into the building, or are we
right,
talking
coming into the
virtually?
building.
Well, very soon, we'll get that first date, it would be, it might be a week into school or something along those lines is what we're looking at.
And so, I do not I'm not familiar with IEPs, but what is our normal procedure for families with IEPs? Did we always meet with them before school started and go over what the first semester or first quarter was going to be like? And if that's how we did it before and it was in person, are we going to be doing virtual IEP meetings? And when would those start for those families? I guess what is going to be the new procedure with the way we're having to learn right now for these families who have IEPs?
So I invited Dr. Yates to be with us tonight because I anticipated we might have some IEP-related questions.
And are you also over the SSD?
Yeah, I'm the SSD lead area coordinator.
So can you also kind of shadow IEPs, SSDs? Are they one and the same? Are they different? And also go over how we're doing that.
Okay, so SSD provides special education services to students with IEPs across all the districts in St. Louis County. So I am officially employed by SSD, and we have staff employed by SSD, and we oversee all the special education in conjunction with what the partner district provides, because they are Brentwood students. So normally, if we were in person, an IEP is required to be reviewed at least annually. So therefore, we don't review all IEPs automatically before the school year, because if there's been one, last October, last January, last May, they're on yearly cycles. When we had to go virtual last spring, SSD put in place a program or a plan. It's called a distance learning plan. It was not required, but because SSD believes that we need to be in alignment with what we need to do to meet kids' needs, they developed that. And so we contacted all families, and we developed outside of or alongside the IEP, a distance learning plan. And so what that is, that distance learning plan pulls in all of the students' IEP goals, what service areas they normally get, accommodations and modifications that are needed, and then the families, along with the special education staff and the general education representatives, talk about what that virtual component needs to look like. I will tell you, those minutes are not completely the same because it's a lot different when you're sitting in a classroom in a small group with a teacher versus sitting in a computer all day. So they are not identical, but we do talk about what is needed in a virtual setting in order to meet those, because our goal of an IEP is to meet those IEP goals. So even though we look at the whole child, an IEP just focuses on those IEP goals that the team has identified in that document. And so what we have shared with families is that our goal, and the case managers, special ed teachers understand that they are to contact all of the families with IEPs in Brentwood prior to kids starting and review and revise those distance learning plans.
So we already started that, or have we started that process?
Yes, so the expectation is because our kids that chose the traditional model start next Thursday, so they know the teachers are gonna, like Dr. Tripphammer said, our teachers, which is awesome because sometimes it doesn't always happen in partner districts, but Brentwood is amazing in including all of our SSD teachers and all of their professional development for their programs. So our teachers are very much involved in the Canvas training and other curriculum trainings going on in the buildings. So some of them have started reaching out to parents, but most of them probably won't be having those distance learning plan meetings until next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Anything else
So
on?
Brian, I mean, I'm gonna belabor this a little bit, because I've said this as we came into this. I mean, for us, I go back to our mission, vision, seeing all these kids, and one of the big things for me is those at-risk kids become even more so at risk with all this. So I get what SSD is bringing. I guess I'm pushing on you, what are we doing above and beyond? So it's fine, this next week, I hear K through 5, but we're K through 12. Everything we can do to test earlier and find out where we are, I mean, that's something, all the other stuff going on, that is something I believe we should be able to do with a district of 850 kids, where we're really differentiating ourselves. So I hear a lot of this, but making sure, Brian, I'm asking of you and your staff that this really is a priority. Everything else going on, we got to take care of those kids, right? Because we're at this path, right? And this, we're coming to this cross points on the roads. We really, really need to see those that need that extra help. And we got to do everything we can to do that. It's a big, big deal for me.
I agree, and we're utilizing every staff member in the district to wrap around these supports, be creative in how we're doing so.
So IEPs and SSD children will be starting to be contacted Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week to give them what their learning is going to look like.
Yeah, so some of the teachers, I apologize if you weren't finished. So some of the teachers have already reached out to parents to see what date is best for them, because of course we want the parent to be able to participate. Some prefer phone conversations, some prefer Zoom conferences. But the goal is that we would have developed those distance learning plans by the end of the day Wednesday.
And then will their Canvas training look a little different? Do we need to do another YouTube that's going to focus more on how the IEP or the SSD child family experience is going to be? Just curious.
We can. I mean, that's something that Dr. Gates and I can
Yeah,
work
and
on.
we have kind of briefly talked about that because I had all the SSD teachers in person for a day last Thursday where we talked about that because of course the special education looks a little bit different. But the goal was for us to get the special ed teachers through the original overall campus training and then from there determine what are those facets that maybe we need a little additional on. So Dr. Tripphammer and I talked about what that follow-up could look like. I've also conversed with some of the building principals who have pulled in some outside supports for Canvas, and they're also aware of that also. So that is my goal is for when the special ed teachers asked us if they will be responsible for using Canvas, our response was that was one of the purposes why we did that, so parents could have one place to access that information. And we're also looking into our related services staff, so our SLP, OT, PT, how they can also integrate with that. But those are things that we're navigating once we get the main training taken care of.
But it should not be dramatically different. I think we're talking about some slight tweaks to use on the
Correct.
same platform, so.
And just something that I've heard, and this is maybe, right now I feel like we got to get all the communication pieces out. But as we start the school year and our parents are trying to juggle their jobs and their daily emails and their daily work and then the kids, is there any way we can go back to and I'm not sure how the elementary does it, I know in middle school, Dr. Lawyer said kind of Friday e-blast. Can we have a set day that parents know that all the communication is coming out, so that they know Friday from this time to this time, or Friday is the day that I'm gonna be having all the communication, because I'm hearing that there's a lot being sent, and they can't read everything all the time, and that they're getting it from all different places, and so, you know, if we can either, and this is just a thought, an idea, once school starts, like have the principals giving the communication for their buildings, for their parents, and having each school maybe every Friday have kind of like an e-blast, so parents know that that's when, you know, when communication's coming out, so that they're not trying to juggle their own emails and everything like that, and all of our emails. Just a thought.
How about we, is that a good segue into Sam's communications update? Or do you want Tam to answer?
No, I think that's great. No, I was just,
Like, was that directed at me, or?
no, it's kind of, I was just trying to, I don't have my glasses on, and I
No,
don't
that's
have my
okay.
sunglasses on, so I'm looking at everybody blindly right now.
Sorry, Brian, real quick, sorry, Sam.
Yes, sir.
Back to the metrics, though, just so
Yeah.
for those that have opted for traditional, right, we've communicated out that our goal is target quarter one, right? How, just your sense for, how does that, you know, I think what I'm hearing is we want to leverage those metrics, right, to actually guide that decision. But how does that work timing-wise, right? Because I think helping any type of certainty in this uncertain time, or just, you know, what does that look like? You as superintendents have committed to what in terms of putting together that dashboard?
Well, just the, you know, you would have those levels of the dashboard to help guide the decisions. Now, and I can tell you, we were in a meeting with some infectious disease specialists in the Department of Health, and, you know, their advice was, you know, the metrics can't be your end-all be-all. You know, you need to consider other factors, obviously, you know, everything from social distancing to the processes and procedures, which, you know, we feel very good about here in Brentwood. You know, what has been your experience up to this point with in your community and so forth. So there's a lot of things to look at, but the metrics is a guiding tool. That being said, you know, my goal would be that on a weekly basis that we're going to study these trends. We'll share that with the board, and you know, I don't believe there's, you know, anything inherently magical about that October 24th date. So that being said, if we start to see positive trends before that, that could certainly, it could be a board discussion for, you know, a community survey if we feel that would be helpful information, and we could even look at a graduated approach to getting students back into the building, whether that's a grade level by grade level. There's a lot of different approaches, but I do want us to continue to challenge that and be creative, and not, you know, we did, you know, for planning purposes, you know, I think it was important that we did, you know, make that, you know, quote about the first quarter, but, you know, like I said, I think the, you know, COVID is in the driver's seat, so we just, you know, we've got to watch those trends, and when we see a positive trend and we feel that we can safely bring X amount of students back into the building, then I want to have that conversation with the board.
So I think that this is a good segue to Sam, though. I think having that out there is really, really important, right? Because what did go out there was, it wasn't, hey, this is the edict, but I mean, it can be interpreted as that's what it is. But you know, the conversations we've had, plus the reality is we have private schools that are going back right now, right? And so I push on us, if they're able to go do this, there's absolutely no, in tighter quarters, right? In the space we have, there's absolutely no reason we really should not be pushing ourselves to think about how we go do that.
Well, and I think it will be helpful. Obviously, we'll be watching. There's, you know, there's not a lot of examples out there, but there are some St. Charles schools. There's some examples, and I have some contacts in some of those schools. So over the next few weeks, it'll be good to see legitimately how successful they're being, and we can learn from that.
Great.
Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I can just kind of jump in on the tail end of that conversation. I think one of the things that I am trying to reinforce at the district level, when I'm trying to have our buildings reinforce, is that this is a moving target. Every day is going to change. We all just need to be aware that we've got to be paying attention, and we've got to be engaged to this conversation, because what we're planning and doing today might look totally different tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. And so we just all need to kind of be plugged in to what's going on in the district, and there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. But I think that's bottom line. We need to be able to make sure that people see that, yes, this is the information, this is where it is, but that, that we're constantly revising and updating, and based on data, based on the newest information that we're learning, we're adjusting to that. And so we want to make sure that people are as tapped into the information that we're pushing out there as possible, which kind of brings, into Carrie's point, one of the things that I've been doing as we've been getting our teachers kind of in the Canvas realm is working with our building secretaries and administrators, refreshing them on a lot of Parent Square, working with them to develop some consistency in how they're doing things. One of the benefits of having our academic program choice form through Parent Square is that it pushed those people that still hadn't quite gotten on board with it to kind of make that final plunge to make sure that their account was activated and to make sure that the information in there was correct. And what that does is it really does create that warehouse of anything that you get from the school district is going to be in your Parent Square account. And you can filter it out by building, you can filter it out by student, so that you're not digging through just your email to see what has been sent. You can go and see a stream and a timeline of everything that has been shared, so you can go, at the end of every week and see, okay, what all has been sent this week. The other thing that's really nice about that, and I plug this all the time, but parents have the opportunity to say, instead of me getting 12 or 20 emails throughout the day from teachers, principals, the district, with the updates and things that are kind of happening as the day is progressing, I want to get that digest at the end of the day. I want to get one email at the end of every day that is a recap and has links to everything that's been shared through that platform. So again, you kind of have some control, and you can build that consistency as a parent on knowing when and how the information is coming to you. So those are tools that we can use, but certainly I agree. I think the more consistent, and I think a lot of our buildings are on that kind of Friday schedule. Some do it every Friday, some it's more every other Friday. And to make sure that we kind of have that designated day where we can push information out. And certainly we lead by example in the district in terms of how we send some things out as well. So that's certainly something that we can continue to have those conversations on and build that, build the building's capacity to be able to do that well. But also I think, again, the benefit and one of the reasons why we moved to Parent Square is that it puts a lot of that control in the parents' hands as well in terms of how they want to see that information. So we'll keep working on it, and I think those are some great suggestions that we can continue to have those discussions with the buildings and their secretaries who are kind of helping put together all that information with them. And while we're on the topic of Parent Square, obviously our engagement has been way up. We're able to track a lot more. We're in the midst of pulling in new data for the new school year, so there have been a couple things here and there where we've had to make sure that each and every family has had every student show up for them in the way that they need to, especially some of those with the new kindergartners coming in, making sure that those kiddos are getting pulled in and assigned to the right families. But there have been a handful of issues, and we've been able to resolve those. And Parent Square, despite it being the start of the school year and this always being the hardest time to get your vendors to be able to offer really quality customer support, their team has been really good in terms of getting back to us. So, if there are problems, if there are issues, working to develop, the buildings able to address those, but certainly I'm always available as well and can be that line of support for folks as well. On the staff side of things with Parent Square, we are now live with our health screening form. So staff members now don't have to sign a paper when they go into a building to do their checklist. They can open up the Parent Square app, they can load it up on their computer the night before or the day of when they're going into, before they even leave for work, look over the symptoms, be able to check that, no, I'm good, I have all that. They'll get a clearance to come on into the building. If they check and say, yeah, I had some of these symptoms, or I was in touch with somebody who had COVID, there'll be a pop-up that says, hey, wait a minute, check your guidelines, make sure you're safe to come in, contact the right person. But if you're exhibiting these symptoms, the safe thing to do is to keep your distance. And so that form is now live. We'll be able to track that. Now, obviously, that's super convenient for staff because you can pull it up on your phone in a couple of clicks, make sure that you're all good to go and that we're tracking and doing that contact tracing. But for the district, it's also helpful because we can see, if there starts to be a trend. If all of a sudden we look at a report and see, gosh, we had 5 teachers that were all experiencing a cough, maybe we need to look and make sure that there wasn't something else going on there, and how do we double check that? And what's really great is, obviously, right now we've got our staff are the ones coming in the building, but when students return, parents will have this option. They'll be able to run through this every morning before they leave for school, and we'll be able to see what kiddos maybe have some symptoms, and maybe that's why they're staying home, and we'll be able to run those reports and really track it. So it houses all of that information in one place, makes it really easy for us to be as safe as possible when it comes to those symptoms, and so really pleased that we now have a digital way to do that that's just going to make it easier on everybody. The other thing that we're doing to try and make life as easy as possible, and we mentioned some of the Canvas events that we're having. I really do believe anything that we do in person, we can find something similar to do in a virtual space. And so I've been working a lot over the past couple of weeks with folks in the districts like Dr. Trephammer and with buildings to create opportunities to do Q&A sessions, to do open houses, to put together those introductions that normally people would have a chance to come into the building and ask those sorts of questions. But now there's a way that we can do that virtually that gets us the sort of engagement that we would want. I mean, the one we did the other night, we had 130 people watching at one time. And that's not even counting the folks that went back and rewatched or folks that tuned in later. That was at once we had that many people viewing it. And so we're able to track that, we're able to see that, and we're able to then also kind of target making sure that, okay, gosh, if we do something and only a handful of people tune in, maybe we need to think of another way of bringing that information forward. So we're going to continue to look at that, and as we get, if we get a lot of questions about a particular topic, we'll schedule something else and we'll find the time for it, and we'll slot those in where we need to. But so far, I think we've had a lot of success with what those nights look like, and we'll continue to utilize them when and how and as often as we need to. The final thing that I'll just say is one of my goals, once we kind of get into the school year and we've kind of gotten some of these transition things with reentry under our belts, is to do some work to support our teachers with some ed tech resources and to kind of house, they've obviously been really focused on Canvas, and there's almost so much information that it can be a little overwhelming at times. We've put together a really nice page, both for parents and for staff, in terms of here's all the different things that you can do to start getting accustomed to what Canvas is. But there's a lot of other tools that we'll be rolling out as the school year starts. Everything from here's how to make sure that your camera setup for those lessons over Zoom or Google Meet look as good and are as quality as possible, to here's some tips and tricks that you can use to integrate with Canvas to make sure that we're reaching everybody and we're doing everything that we can. So that's also going to be a big priority as we move over the next couple of weeks, is giving our staff a lot of empowerment to be able to get the information they need and not be overwhelmed with all the different things that they're trying to juggle with the start of a new school year. So those were some of the big updates that I wanted to touch on, but if you have any questions or if there's anything specific I can dive more deeply into, I'd be happy to.
I had a question about the health screenings. So who looks at that information for the teachers, and more importantly, when the kids go back to school? Is it a nurse that can collates all of that in the morning, or
yes, so we can
give
give access to those reports to whoever we want at the district level or at the building level, so that whatever workflow kind of works best as we get into transitioning into that, they can pull that up. Now, this is not going to be the same if you know that your child is staying home. Parents, you still need to go through the route of letting us know that, hey, they're not coming in today, this is why. And it also gives us context. But that health screening is a way to track anybody that is coming in our building, and it's a way to say, hey, you know what, everybody checked in today and they were feeling okay, so we can track that. And it also, again, is just kind of those overall trends. We'll also be looking at, and I know the nurses have had a lot of conversations about this, but making sure that they're sharing information with each other as far as, okay, this family over here, maybe they were having some symptoms, how do we keep an eye, and how do we make sure that it's an isolated incident as opposed to, maybe a pocket of something bigger going on. So there'll be a couple different ways that we'll be able to track that. But the health screening form really is kind of that safety net. It's that bare, that basic kind of bare minimum of ask yourself these questions every day before you come in, and if you have yes to any of them, that's when you need to kind of look over the guidelines again, maybe have a conversation, if you're a staff member, with your supervisor, if you're a parent, calling your secretary and talking about those absences and going from there. But it's to get people in the habit of saying, hey, in these times, a cough, a fever might not be the normal thing that you're looking at, and we need to be extra safe and make sure that we're taking the precautions that we need to. But it is really nice because it gives us a really easy to read report so that we can see, gosh, over the past week we've had 15 students home with symptoms at this building. Maybe we need to do something more proactively instead of responding to something after positive tests are coming in or something else is going on with that, we might be able to adapt a little bit quicker to what's going on because of those reports. But certainly, I have access to them. Dr. Tripphammer can look at that, and the nurses as well will definitely be the ones that will kind of be reviewing that information most regularly.
But on immediate, I think her question was, for right now, the teachers that are coming into the buildings right now, do they have a certain time that they have to have that form filled out so that our nurses can be looking at that and making sure that everyone that is getting ready to come in is safe to come in, so that all of our employees feel safe to come in?
Yes.
And are we doing temperatures or not? I know that was something that was once said, CDC said it was related to COVID, then it was said that they were not related to COVID, or it didn't really, wasn't a key factor in COVID. So are we doing temperatures or not temperatures for staff members coming into the buildings?
Well, it's a question on the assessment.
It's a question on the
So the expectation that we've been setting forth with our staff is that they will be checking their temperature as part of that assessment that they're doing every day before they come in. So yes, it's training and working with staff to make sure that they've filled it out. And yes, the answer is yes to your questions, that we can take a look and say, gosh, I've got everybody here that submitted their health screening form except for this teacher down the hall. I need to check in with them and see, are they doing all, maybe they're doing all their lessons from home today. Are they, in the building and they forgot? Did they stay home because they do have a symptom and they didn't fill out the form? We can follow up with all those. We'll be able to see exactly where they are. Exactly. That's the purpose of this, to be able to respond to it.
Each nurse in each building that's responsible for that? Or do we have a person responsible yet?
To be determined. Sam rolled out the form, was that yesterday, Sam?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the workflow. I would think it's gonna be the nurses, and then that's gonna funnel to Dr. Tripphammer, who's in charge of the nurses for the district.
And are there HIPAA concerns about having people disclosing their medical information, and who has access to that?
No, actually, there's a really nice flow chart that some of the other school districts have put together that talks about what crosses the border with HIPAA and what does not. But these screenings are being used by districts across the country right now, and it's been vetted by different companies and different districts and all around. So we are not out of the ordinary for putting these questions out there and asking them, and for our process in terms of who's looking at them. It really is more about the big picture trends and who's submitted, who's not. This is also, it's just the reality of it that a lot of it is the honor system. We need to, we are asking our parents to be honest when they fill it out. We're asking that they're doing their due diligence. We're asking that our staff are being honest when they're filling out and that they're doing their due diligence. And so, there is an element of it that is, this is our expectation. We need you to do it every single day. And that's just the habit that we need to build with it. But certainly, at the end of the day, if they say yes to one of those questions, they're going to get something that says, hey, take a look at your guidelines. You've got a COVID symptom. You probably need to work remote, stay home, do what you need to not put others at risk for that. And so again, I really do think of it, that's the first kind of line of defense when it comes to symptoms and how we track those in the district. But it's one of many other things that we'll be doing, especially as students come back, to make sure that people are getting these messages reinforced over and over again. Everything from reminders to the posters that are going to be posted outside the doors, making sure that people are thinking about those symptoms before they get near one of our buildings. All those things are going to tie into the kind of new reality that we're into, which is got to think twice about anything that you're feeling before you go into a place where there are other people.
Anything else for Sam?
I just wanted to throw out a hope that as we're communicating with parents in the next couple of weeks, that we're making sure that we're talking about our expectations and our level of support that we're going to be providing to them. Because I think when you get as a parent an email that says, okay, here's your child's deal, I'll throw out the middle school one, for example. Our expectation is that they're going to be on their computer for these 4 class periods every day, and then plus and minus at the end. But talking to parents about what that looks like when they don't make that, or when that's hard for their, when math is a struggle, how they can get support for that, so that when you see a story in the news about a family being turned into Child Protective Services because their kid wasn't logging into their Zooms, how we're letting them know that that's not gonna happen here, and because we have these things in place, and this is how we're gonna support you, and when you have trouble, this is who you reach out to take some of that anxiety off of them.
Absolutely, and I can work with the administrators to kind of make sure that we're all in lockstep as far as expectations, supports, making sure that we follow through. I think there is, in general, a feeling of, we need to make sure that those expectations are set early, so that we get off to a good start, but you're right, we need to make sure that we're also doing that, and, we do that at the district level, but how can we make sure that the buildings are following through on that as well? And again, a lot of my focus right now is working with those administrators and helping build those communication processes back up as we get back into the school year. So I've got that note, and we'll add that to the conversations we have with them. Thank you.
So,
All right, next up, we have Dave Gill and Andy Hartnett to give us our campus additions and reno, the project update, and then that can segue. Tonight we've invited Tom Kraska from K&S to join us. We also have Todd Powers from Idner here as well to talk overall about the project and the project schedule. So, Dave, you want to kick us off here?
Yes, the progress summary that I submitted was based on dates that were the latest dates on 8/15, which was Saturday. Building A, which is the middle school, the contractor is currently working on finish operations in all the classrooms, at ceilings, floors, painting. Final completion for Building A is scheduled for 8/21. The auditorium, the new seating has been installed at this point. That will be followed by carpet and aisle lighting and stage curtains. Final completion is scheduled for 11/15/20. These dates should pretty much coincide with that color drawing you have, which K&S will talk about. The building addition, we're currently working on underpinning the existing high school footing so that the new foundation can be installed to complete the first floor of the addition, which takes the new building over to touch the high school. That'll be followed by the superstructure in the building enclosure, the final completion scheduled for 12/7. Building B, which is the existing high school building, all rooms are currently work in progress. Some are in demolition, most of them are in electrical, plumbing, rough end. Finishing operations are underway in some of the rooms. Some rooms are actually finished in the high school. The second floor is scheduled for 9/18, first floor for 9/11, not including the office area, which I'll get to next. And the lower level, 9/18, excluding the shop area, which is impacted by the north elevator and the office suite addition. The high school new office addition, this has been impacted by some unknown structural elements, which we have now addressed and have engineers' direction on. But it has caused a delay in the completion of the office, currently scheduled for 11/16. In the north building, the north building is complete with the exception of a couple classrooms where we had some ongoing water issues which delayed the floor covering insulation, and that's scheduled for 8/21. Both elevator additions are scheduled for completion of 11/27, and the small gym scheduled for 1/7/21, along with site work. In the past period, we've added change orders number 13 and 14, which you see on the second sheet. Those were primarily MEP conflicts that we discovered, mostly in Building B, the high school.
What does MEP stand for, sir?
Big part,
MEP.
Mechanical, electrical, plumbing?
Anything specific you want to share on that, Dave, or at least an overview of what some of those MEP issues were?
Sure.
Just kind of an overview. I'm not looking room by room, but just to give the board a sense of.
It's primarily things that we discovered in the walls that we didn't know were there. Conflicts that we had with where we put new equipment and what we had to move to get it to function where it was supposed to go. Those sorts of changes.
Okay.
How'd we end up with, I mean, I thought we spent a bunch of money on engineers coming in to take a look at it. So I'm assuming when we go in and survey this initially, right, and we don't have old plans, but the reason we bring engineers in is, hey, the dimensions of the building are such, right, the rooms are this, if there's any anomalies, that should highlight something. But, I mean, what did we specifically miss? I mean, this is a couple $100,000 almost, right, so what did we miss? I guess, more importantly, we're staring at other projects, right, so how do we learn, you know, I'm looking at this, we've got to take care of this, but have we learned anything or not?
Well, Todd, do you want to address that in terms of the initial survey and why or why not some of these things are not known commodities coming into the project?
Sure. I'll pull this off, just,
Oh,
it's hard to yell through these things. So, yeah, essentially, when we go through the building initially, you're measuring and documenting everything you can see, every, you know, ceiling tiles, you can lift, you know, get to the systems. But, and I think you'll hear Tom say it, you know, what is really back behind a lot of these old walls, and essentially walls that have been, you know, put in over walls and things like that, isn't we just, you know, we really landed in a bigger infrastructure project than it initially looked like. So we really started last summer, you all remember the kitchen, and it seemed like every day, you know, it was something new in there with, you know, digging up underground piping and electrical and things of that nature. And the tunnel has been one of our, you know, biggest hurdles. And then you have that tunnel that crosses from the gym building, the A building, over to the B or the high school building. And that thing has been, you know, a major undertaking for the last many months to get the tunnel in shape, get the equipment and the piping and, you know, the electrical, everything inside of that in shape. So, you know, a lot of these things, they just, you know, they weren't discoverable until you did demolitions. The abatement's been that way too. Every wall cavity we've opened has been, you know, generally full of asbestos, so we've had to stop, abate, you know, and then go back in and do the work. So you asked what have we learned, and that's a great question. So we've been extensively touring and visiting over at Mark Twain, and one of the things that unfortunately didn't happen early enough in the high school, middle school was the asbestos surveyor wasn't engaged as soon as they really should have been. And we put them on this job. They've already done this work. So, and they're doing it much more in depth this time. So we've asked them to, as best they can, you know, they can't tear up walls, but they can cut holes, they can poke into spaces, and we want to make sure that even if we don't know exactly what's in these places, we're going to go ahead and make the assumption that the worst case scenario is what we're going to have. So that's really the big lesson learned, is that while we took a very surgical approach to high school, middle school in an effort to keep the cost in line, it's a big building, and you know, if you were to do a full extensive overhaul and really completely gut the thing, you know, obviously it would have been a much larger, more expensive project. So we're definitely taking a little bit more of a invasive approach when we look at Mark Twain, and knowing that they're all basically built in the same vintage and in the same state of maintenance and repair.
Andy, anything that you want to add before we get into Tom talking about about the schedule?
I don't have a whole lot, I just have good news on the furniture. All the furniture has arrived, and we're getting it installed in every classroom as it gets turned over to us. We're working with all the high school and middle school teachers to be able to have them get set up, if there's things, personal items cleaned up and set up for them so that they can teach from their classroom if they choose to, or not. So, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're just trying to get everybody, where they need to be, if they can be there.
How does, so I know we have some rooms that will not quite be done, so how does that work? Do we know it's 85% of the teachers will have the option, next Thursday, or we don't know, we're still?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, building fees are a big problem
Yep.
right now, and kind of, we're gonna be calling them back as we can get their rooms finished. But we are facilitating the ability to get their stuff if they need it. We spend a lot of time with a lot of those teachers in that building to make sure that they have what they need.
We also have alternate spaces too, if the teachers ultimately want to come in. We have a variety of spaces, the lecture hall is a great space, for instance, so there's some opportunities there as well over the,
Well, to Dr. Lane's point, we've got the lower level of C is a great flexible space to use for any teacher who wants to come in and do lessons from the actual school building. So,
And the lower level C is the one that's totally done.
it's almost totally done. There's little bits that need, like, finish work that needs to be done.
And building A is the middle school?
Yes,
And how many rooms do we still have left to get done?
those actually, except for, last I checked at about 3 o'clock today, one, which needs ceiling fans in it. The rest of them are all done. There was an issue in the science labs where the tops for the cabinetry were off by a little bit, but they're essentially,
And then we don't need this momentarily, but where is the fax room at this point in time?
the fax room is not complete yet. The tops are supposed to come in tomorrow. And the ceiling needs to go.
What about we just, this always gives me pause, lower level water issues, so we fixed that. I know we had, last fall, the cafeteria, we had problems. When we toured, we had some, is that resolved? It's not resolved. We just took a bunch of rain, I have no idea, but water scared me, so where are we with that?
So we did have a little water issue when we got that 5 inches of rain or whatever it was the other day. It's mostly tied to, we had a couple of gutter issues still, keep lingering, basically fix those, but there's the connector, I call it the connector between building B and building C. We get a lot of water off of that roof. So there's a hole that's dug out right beneath it for the new elevator to go in, and it's just finding the path of least resistance. So one of the things my team did last week is we set up a sump system on the actual roof to keep that water from actually pooling over. So that's what he can do to help with that issue. The rest of it's getting that elevator finished.
But in that is the finished area, am I not, is that correct?
Well, that little bit of area has not been
Okay.
finished off, just for that very reason, because we're gonna have all that work.
But we don't, I guess where I'm going is we don't have risk, we have a beautiful space right there that is one door away, we don't have risk right there. Okay.
But is that the elevator that's not going to be completed
Yes.
until November 27th?
Correct.
So we've got potential water still, or rain still, and then we're going to have winter coming in. So is there, and maybe this is for Candace, I don't know, is there a reason to not switch something else and have the elevator addition be done sooner because of potential weather that could come and then damage or flood the areas that is already done?
I think that's probably a good question for Tom.
Okay.
Should we segue into the schedule? All right, Tom, you schedule and take any questions.
Yeah, thanks for listening to me. I understand I'm here because the board's concerned about the progress at the high school. I understand that. I understand that the board's concerned about the amount of change orders and extras that we've had on the job. I understand that. I am very concerned about giving you these dates and sticking with them. If I was to say that, first of all, that's important to know that we're doing the best that we can. There is a plan in place, and this schedule represents what we know from today, that based on the problems and things that are in place and being dealt with, the extra work that we're still doing to work with infrastructure. But there's three types of schedules that I hate to say that it sounds crazy that there's three schedules, but there's different levels. There's a grand CPM schedule that I'm responsible to provide per our contract with the district. It's very complicated. It's very hard to utilize as a district personnel, for district personnel. So we, months ago, started to create a floor plan schedule, which is what you see in front of you now. There's actually one that's even more detailed that when we meet on Wednesdays, that we talk about room by room turnover, where Andrew and his crew need to move something, or where we are about to give them a space so they can move into it. So there's all these different levels of schedule that we work together on. The infrastructure, Todd mentioned that the infrastructure is surprisingly, there's lots of surprises. It's haunted everywhere you go, that you think you're going to get some momentum going. So there's something new that stops you dead in your tracks. So we bounce around. And that's why when you walk through, you'll see, well, this room's sitting there with nothing going on. And then the people are over here. We just continually bounce around. And that's not productive. It's very hard on us, very hard on our subs. That being said, I think that we've come a long way towards getting all of that exposed. There's very little demo left to do in any of these buildings, and the demo is what exposes these unforeseen conditions or hidden infrastructure items. So with this schedule I gave you, this is the intermediate level schedule that I think works for administrative people, teachers, and even our subcontractors. But there's a flaw in that you've got dates that are somewhat negative. In other words, as an example, the auditorium. Dave mentioned that if you go into the auditorium, it's going to look completely done here in just a short period of time. But there's some aisle lighting that has to go in. So my date reflects an 8-week delivery time on some LED aisle lighting that doesn't keep you from using it all. It does receive the carpeting, so the carpet can't go down until we have the LED lighting, but the auditorium's going to look completely done. So that is one of the negatives to this, is that the dates reflect the last item in that space, in that colored space. So we have, as I said, I think gone a long way toward exposing these issues, gotten past them, and are moving forward. We need some momentum. We don't have any momentum on this job. It's been really hard to get it and maintain it. And there's a myriad of reasons, and I don't know that I want to go into that tonight, other than to let you know that I think we're at a point where we can see the completion and see the light at the end of the tunnel for this thing. I don't know what questions you might have about this or how helpful it is to you, but I'm happy to answer questions that you have.
So I mean, the argument about we discover stuff when we demo, I thought we were informed a while ago that demo was done, so what's left to be demoed?
There isn't any much at all left, but we've demoed as recently as just weeks ago areas. And there's as an example, there's a chimney that was, I don't know if it was unforeseen or what, but it turned out the chimney's holding up bar joists, beams, and all these other things, and the chimney needs to be demoed. So, you know, we proceeded to take it apart surgically so we could design a solution to carry all that structural load. That minor project turned into a major project. I don't know that it's going to be major money, but it's going to be, it's major in terms of disruption to that area. It's just sitting there unfinished, nothing going on right now. We've ordered we're just to the point where we got a design solution. We demoed enough that the designer could look at it. We ordered the steel, and as soon as we get it, we'll probably knock it out in just a week or two. But it's that discovery, coming up with a solution, and sometimes pricing it, but lately we've just been doing T&M on these complicated things that are hard to price, and then getting the work done.
Have you had enough staffing, enough people on site to do this? Because the dates do just keep going further and further out. And one of the things that we
had talked about with COVID and our kids being out of the building is that there would be more time to maybe bring in more people or progress further in this project at that point. I mean, do you have enough staff to meet these timelines that you've given us right now, or?
The amount of staff that we have on the project is dictated by the work that's available. We have been hearing from the very beginning from the people that are overseeing your best interests that we don't have enough people on the job, and we keep explaining the same thing, is that we cannot continue with starting and stopping and expect people to put crews on the job only to send them home the next day because there's asbestos in the ceilings that have to be removed. That was not required. This has been going on since the cafeteria. Last May, this project this is how it is almost every day there. So we've been running 40 people to 50 in that range. A project like this that was flowing smoothly and probably that wasn't occupied by students, you would see 60, 70 or more people. So the answer to your question is the people are available. I've just got to get it to where we can flow and move forward without stopping and starting. But we've had some issues with the COVID affecting manpower. I don't know to what extent, because I haven't really tested our subs hard by saying, I've got all this work out in front of you, now go do it. But because we haven't been to that point, but we've had we lost a few people with COVID issues. Some people just didn't want to be in the building. I came close to losing my superintendent of the job. He's very seriously concerned about it. But the problem is not lack of manpower that I know of. It's the ability to bring them up, to bring the numbers up and then keep them there.
So what prevents us from doing that now? We don't have any more demo. We shouldn't come across any more asbestos. Why? I guess where I'm here, Tom, I'll be very honest, and we had a subcommittee since now. Last May, or whatever May that was, we sat here and listened to 3 proposals, and what K&S outlined to us is, we've done jobs like this before, they're older buildings in tight, densely populated areas, we can go do this. And we sat here, the board, not Chris, at the time, listened to that and got confidence in that. I've got to be completely honest, I have no confidence right now. We're getting additional leads thrown here. Demo aside, are we throwing other bodies at this? We're not. And you know, I look at these dates, I'll even pick on this in with the elevator, right? We've got a hole in the ground, water coming in there with, and I don't know all the particulars, I don't. That's why we have folks like you. How are we going to go get this done? How do we get to job completion so that we can move on from this? I mean, it's a personal reflection. I take it personally. I sat here and said, yes, I want KMS, and you know, honestly, I'm extremely disappointed, and so my ask is, what are we doing to do this? I'll give you another example. There's a mound of dirt. I get a phone call every week after a big rain. You know what the phone call is? Hey, why is that mound of dirt still out in front of the high school washing down Bridgeport? I have no idea. It's a great question. You know, and there's lots of variables, but I guess what I'm after, and I believe, I'm gonna speak for myself, I've talked to everyone on the board, is help us understand how we get to job complete, because we gotta get the job complete. And if you're saying this is it, and you're pretty good with this, and then, okay. But, you know, we've got dates, I've got a series of reports that we've had from Sigma Construction. We've been asking this question since last fall, where are we, where are we, where are we? We can pull these up and share them. Every report we get, dates slip. So now, honestly, this is the most helpful thing I've seen in a year and a half. This is good, to start. However, I look at this, all I have is, you know, I tell my kids all the time, data, right? You get data, you get patterns, we've got a pattern now. Delay, delay, delay. So what can we do? Like, honestly, first thing is get the amount of dirt gone. That'd be a start, right? So then we've got some progress here. So I guess looking at this is good. This is a start, but having things actually happen, the construction site looks like a complete junkyard. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with demolition. And again, why I'm fired up about this is I think this person, I sit on the board, I represent the community. I was an active member in the vote to bring you on. We placed our trust in you and your organization. What I'm asking for you now is you gotta get us a job complete.
Well, what you're saying is that hiring us was a mistake, that someone else would have done a better job.
I'm not.
I dispute that.
I'm not, I didn't say that at all. What I'm saying is I've got all facts to know this. I'm asking you how to get the job complete.
Great. What we have to do is we have to, as I said earlier, we have to get the infrastructure issues identified, resolved, so that we can move forward and get some momentum going. And that goes throughout if I was to walk with you and go to every room in the building, each room has a story, a problem. Excuse, if you want to call it excuse, I can't help what you think about the reason. You should look at the change order log sometime. I think it's 7 pages. Hundreds, literally, of odds and ends that are starting us and stopping our work constantly. We didn't expect that. Yes, I'm experienced with old commercial buildings. It's all I've done my whole life. And there's so much of this that is expected and is normal and easy to overcome. I'm going to tell you that I think this is very unusual. The condition of the buildings was in really rough shape and had lack of maintenance in a lot of the infrastructure areas. And I don't know how anyone could have identified that, bidding the job, designing the job, or anything else. But I've been doing this since my entire life, and this is one of the most challenging jobs we've ever had. And I'm there. I come to the meetings weekly myself. Not that that's a big deal, but I offer a little bit in terms of problem solving. I try to keep the morale up among my people, which is a challenge. I try to answer the questions. I take anything that your people need as my first priority. I care about it. And up until now, it seems like our meetings are all about extras, all about changes, about design issues. Now they're more about turning things over and getting Andrew's team in, us working together to get things done and get things over. That's a big difference just in the last month and a half, 2 months. That would be, if you were at the meetings, that you would see. Other than that, we've had terrible conditions with the weather. That incident that happened last Saturday night was very unusual with that much rain. To answer your question about the elevator moving around, they're getting back there and getting access to it. There's some issues with the structure that we had to resolve. I mean, there's always something, but yeah, we want to get those elevators done and get that nightmare behind us, that exposure. But there's large sanitary lines came right out of the center of where the elevator pit was, you know, on one of them that was just completely a surprise. We can handle all this. We can handle this, and we can get this thing done.
I guess I'm concerned with you saying we're doing the best that we can. Are you saying you're doing the best that we can now? Because you've had the building for a year and 6 months. You moved in, started doing stuff back in March. I look at this map and there's 2 areas completed. A cafeteria and the lower level of the building over here on the right.
No, all 3 levels are completed on that building. There's a couple rooms on the lower level that are not completed because of water infiltration. I have nothing to do with, the gym is completed, the cafeteria, the locker rooms, multiple classrooms scattered around the building are completed, and the fax room is almost complete.
Well, 3 weeks ago when I was in there was 1 room in the middle school done. You were talking about abatement. According to a report on 5/20/2020, all abatement was not complete in the middle school, so all rooms are now being remodeled. It should not have taken from 5/20 to now to only have 1 room done in the middle school. We were there as a group, and we were told, oh, come back in a week. You'll be surprised at how much they get done. So I went back 3 weeks later. 1 room had been done, and there was drywall put into the office of the middle school area. That was the only things I saw that had changed in 3 weeks. And I didn't see more than probably, and I went to different areas of the building. There might have been 10, maybe 15 that day in the building.
And we've never had a day with that building.
I'm disappointed, our community is disappointed. You're giving our superintendent a bad rap. You are destroying our community. We are losing kids. As far as I'm concerned, I know COVID is an issue right now, but I don't know that we would be having some of the discussions about in school, out of school right now, if we had a middle school and high school done. Because there is so much space in that area that we should, the size of our district, be able to be in our buildings. And I don't believe anything on these reports anymore. Because if I go back and I show you everything, I can go back. I've highlighted everything we've been told. So I hope that you're being truthful, and I hope that you produce, because right now, I do not have a lot of faith in you or your company right now. Our instruction. We do not hire Dr. Lane for UTAP or somebody other. We don't hire him to oversee his construction. And so he's trying to do a COVID, he's trying to do curriculum, and he's trying to oversee construction. That is not his job. That is your job, and that's the architect's job. And that is David Gilt's job and Andy's. And Andy, I'll tell you, has been a godsend for the Brickworth School District. So it's time that you step up and you put your money where your mouth is, or whatever that saying is. I want to see, and I'll be in that building every 3 weeks now, to see what progress is being done. Because as a taxpayer, and as a board member, and as a parent, I feel it is our responsibility and my responsibility to start watching and seeing what is being done.
So is it possible that so this is actually very helpful. So as we progress against this, is this something that someone here can generate for us? And actually, honestly, this should, in the public forum would be really helpful, because another point of frustration for me is, I go back to the website and the blog that we have is really, it's meaningless, right? It doesn't say anything. But I have this here, and Tom, look, I get it, there's a lot going on, but I'm holding myself accountable for this as well, right? I was part of the decision-making process. But I guess my ask, and I don't know, Brian, through you, I'd like to see this updated as we progress. We've got dates now. I'd also say I'd like to see this out on the website.
Absolutely.
So
This is the first I've seen of it.
Be aware of where we are with this. we should be held accountable. We are being held accountable, and that all of us are in this together. We need to get this done. Got to get this done. I'll tell you right now, you know, first quarter comes up, we still have, you go look at the entrances, we've got flow, I mean, the entrances are not where we need them to be to bring kids in there and have us feel that the kids, staff are safe. So, at a minimum, this should be up, we should make this available, and we should be holding ourselves to this.
Yeah, we'll make that. Well, this is a byproduct of a more detailed schedule. This is available.
Yeah, and this, I mean, Tom, I totally understand.
It's just a different, it's just a format that makes sense to.
This is very digestible for a lay person, and I think this would be good to put up, because it just, I don't know for you all, it just helps. And if nothing else, you know, this presents itself better than even Dave reports we've gotten, because I can now look at this and say, all right, I got it, I understand where we are. And quite honestly, I'll understand where we are, right? When I go look at, hopefully on 11/15, we can check off the auditorium.
Again, the auditorium is going to look much sooner than that.
I'd rather we focus on the classrooms.
Well, I don't,
Classrooms done.
I absolutely, but here's the thing, we've got dates here, now we've got something that we've got to work towards that.
Is there a time frame for just cleaning up the site? Just the exterior of it for the community? Just
Yes,
mostly that pile of dirt that Jamie mentioned earlier.
we're going to take that much more seriously. We considered it our construction zone, not really thinking about what it looks like. Recently, I believe Andrew talked to us about it in a meeting, and I committed to doing something about it. We are going to get that taken care of here in the next week or so. There's most of that gets hauled off the site, so it'll look a lot better when we do that. The view of the stuff that's stored under the canopy, I mean, that's all gang boxes and material that we need. I know that's been, someone had mentioned taking the canopy down and getting rid of all the equipment in front of the building, but that's impossible for us to do. All I can do is hide the stuff behind the large containers and the trailers that are there.
Yeah, that'll be great. The dirt pile.
We're going to
out
dress
front,
up.
that
We're going
would
to
be
dress up the
helpful.
entire front of the site.
Thanks.
Anything else for K&S or Idner at this point? I think we got clear directive on the schedule.
I just want to say one thing. I've been sitting here silent, not because I don't agree with what's been said. I do, so you should assume that what Jamie and Carrie have said. However, I cannot comprehend how every little thing can be a surprise. That just doesn't make any sense to me. If there weren't surprises, that would be a surprise. And so it seems like that should have been taken into account at the beginning. And, you know, this apparent fear to bring bad news to me is very annoying to me. You know, this is the first time I've heard this speech today. It seems like, I said I was being silent, now I'm getting stirred up. It seems like a year or so ago, you should have come in and told us that, bring us along so that, you know, Jamie talks to a lot more people, and I'm an old, unfriendly guy down the street. You know, Jamie gets a lot of this stuff, but, you know, he needs to be able to say to people, it's a nightmare. It's a very complicated job. And then have it means, you know, everything's a big surprise, and now it's a surprise to us that this is going on. I don't think that's the way it should be done. Now, at this point in time, what Jamie said is right. We need to just get the thing done and be done with it. And no more dancing around. And if you run into some bad news, you should come and tell us. I hope there isn't any. But if I learn about more bad news that you didn't tell me, that's going to really annoy me. Really.
I don't understand what forum I would address you in.
We're here every month. We've been happy to listen to you.
So you want to meet?
I don't know, somebody needs to. I don't know, I'm just on the board.
Well,
I wasn't in
I
trouble.
take my place in line of the chain of command as not being the one responsible to fill in the board, but I'm happy to do that. I'd be happy to walk the building with any of you anytime. I don't hide behind anything except chain of command and chain of communication.
Well, one of the underlying issues is that throughout the project, you know, these dates have slid. And sometimes, in my mind, unexpectedly, you know, we would have ongoing conversations. We would hear some optimism that, okay, you know, we should be able to make up some time, and you know, and then it would slide. And so yeah, I obviously at this point to try to have some confidence that, you know, to what you're saying, Tom, and that these dates aren't going to slide. I mean, you know, and I'm not going to reiterate, you know, history. Obviously we've got different viewpoints on this project, some of which could meet in the middle. Yes, there were elements of this project and a fair amount of change orders and so forth. Ultimately, and I'll say it publicly, I've said this to Tom and I've said it at multiple meetings, I do think that, you know, a lot of these things could be overcome with manpower. And ultimately, for whatever reasons, you know, I've walked that site many times and didn't see the amount of subs I would expect to see on an $18 million job. That's been my experience, you know, from my level of it, you know, of being involved. But regardless, you know, my philosophy throughout this thing is, yeah, we would hash it out, but then, okay, what are we going to do from here on out? And that's what I'm hearing from the board. So I obviously, you know, I have the willingness to share bad news with the board, but I don't know that throughout this process I felt I was getting accurate dates and information until, you know, then it becomes an issue where we're you know, a few months out from completion, and just the naked eye would tell you that even as a non-construction person that the job was not going to get completed, and that's when it, you know, kind of started to move in a different direction. So regardless, that's been the history as I see it, and obviously, you know, we got to continue to work together to not let this slide any further, because I need to get kids back into school. So, you guys have anything else for?
No, I guess just to reiterate what I heard, and Tom, I appreciate you coming here to respond, is I heard that the major obstacles, infrastructure type stuff, demo seems to be behind, is what I heard, which now suggests it is bodies can be put at this, so 40 to 60, whatever that is, to get this done. I mean, that's what I heard. To Keith's point, if that's not the case and something comes up, whether it's through Andy or David or Brian or whoever, I mean, I think we as a board are saying we want to hear that, not 3 months after. We want to hear it right then, because this is, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, here's the other thing. We're staring at another $29 million project, and honestly, why would I have any confidence in this board to go select someone to go do something when we right now, we are failing at delivering this thing. And I say we collectively. We're not doing it. We're not getting it done. How's it?
Thank you for coming.
All right. Next up, quick update on the elementary facilities design committee. We actually have a meeting scheduled for Thursday night at 6:30, and that's that one's going to be kind of a specifically on one topic. Is we were looking at some initial layout ideas on the McGrath property and how the building could lay out. The initial idea either cut down or really limited the field.
And so there was some interest from the design committee on, well, that, you know, the field's nice, it gets a lot of community use, so, what would it look like? It was a great question. What could it look like, if we were to get, you know, roughly the same size field or something in that ballpark? What would that do to the building? Would you have to be 2 stories? All of those kind of issues. So, Idner has been working on that, and then that's gonna be the point of that meeting, is to just kind of bring an unbiased, options between those two. Hey, here's what McGrath looks like with a field, here's what it looks like without a field, here's what cost would be associated roughly with those kind of decisions, and kind of let the design committee, obviously, really weigh in and make that decision on which way we want to go with that. Next up, Matt Norrid, we got our final budget adjustment memo.
So this is the, during the last meeting, you all gave permission, in the June meeting, you gave permission to where budget adjustment, or dollars should be allocated throughout the budget to meet the needs, so we weren't any kind of deficit amounts. The reports that I gave you, first page and the memo are really a summary of what all of those movements look like. All of them had zero impact on the financials, so there was no adjustments to the revenues. There were adjustments between the fund, our teachers fund and our general fund, to keep those accounts in a positive or a zero balance, meaning we didn't have any deficits in our budget. We had all the money around. There weren't any effects to the capital projects or the fund balance with those adjustments in there. So our budget memo shows that we did make an increase to our salaries, and we had decreases to benefits, purchase services, and materials to accommodate the increase to the salaries.
That's a question, Matt?
Sure.
So is this, Steve had made a budget adjustment back in June, where, I mean, this seems to be the offset of that, is that correct or no?
So the budget adjustment that was made in June is,
Or May, actually?
yeah, I believe it's May.
Yeah.
If you look at the summary report,
Yeah.
which is, it will be column 2, which will be budget adjustment 2. That will sum up the adjustments that Mr. Chodes applied to our financials. The budget adjustments that I made were really just to bring all of our deficit amounts into a positive stance or a zero stance with how they were aligned with our budget.
Okay.
I don't know if that completely answers that.
So if you look, again, because we had asked questions about this at the time.
Okay.
So in that memo, May 17th, it says salaries were decreased. So Steve, Mr. Chodes has said, salaries were decreased to cover, same thing, budget adjustment, cover the cost of the high school furniture equipment, the amount of $745,000. Now what we're seeing here is we're actually moving those monies back into salaries, or a significant portion of that. So it just seemed to me that we should not have, at that time when we went and did this, we're just correcting or updating for that, and that was my question.
Sure. So budget adjustment to purchase equipment was a fund for adjustment, so it's capital projects.
Okay.
So we didn't move any money from capital projects back into our other accounts. So we primarily work in 4 funds. We work in our general fund, our teachers fund, debt service, and capital projects. So all of the adjustments that we make happen in what we call Fund 1 and 2, which is our teachers fund and our general revenue fund. So there, like to back up, there weren't any adjustments that were made to debt service or capital projects. So even though it kind of looks like that might have happened, the adjustments that Mr. Chodes applied appear to be primarily to affecting the Fund 4, which is capital projects.
And you need your budget adjustment to be approved by us tonight.
So you already have the action item back in June.
Okay.
This is really just an information item to give you guys information on what you gave me to write budget findings. So this was us moving those dollars under your authority. You're giving me the authority to make those changes so that we don't get that funding.
Got it.
Great. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Last item on superintendent report, this is a resolution. Kate, any background on this? This is from the Missouri Ethics Commission.
Right, we're supposed to do this, I think, at least every other year, but, and right now we're in arrears, so, this will bring us up to date, and then I put on the schedule for every year instead of every other year.
Thank you. So as you see, it's a resolution from the Missouri Ethics Committee that has board members that, you know, you can read through it if you haven't already, but basically won't have any conflicts of interest, any profit being made, those types of issues that we submit to the MEC each year. So I think we should get board approval on that and then ultimately be signed off by the president and secretary.
So we just need to move to adopt it, is that right, Brian?
Correct.
I move that we adopt the Board of Education conflict of interest resolution as outlined.
Second. Discussion?
And this just requires signature of president and secretary, correct?
Correct.
This is something we already do.
Yeah.
It's just making a resolution saying that we're going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've done it in the past. You say you just haven't gotten around to it. Well, I haven't been misbehaving.
I wanted to give you guys like 6 months, just in case you wanted to.
Mark, did you have anything?
Brian?
Yes, sir.
I noticed one thing that I think might need to just be modified. I think it says city instead of school district on the resolution.
Okay, we'll make that adjustment before we get it signed and turned back into MEC.
Great. And then can I just say one thing to Matt?
Yeah, he's here.
Matt, in the future, if you have a budget transfer greater than like $200,000, can you just give me a heads up about that?
Sure.
One thing that I noticed, I think this is what Jamie was alluding to, is that there might have been a cleaner way to do both those budget adjustments. And I kind of want to understand why we didn't use the cleaner method, and we should talk about that offline.
Okay. So can I make one comment about the budget transfer?
Sure.
So one of the budget transfers that I probably skimmed over is because of the reserves that we accumulate throughout the year in our general operations. DESI mandates that we have to make a certain minimum transfer to our teachers' fund. So part of that transfer process happened when I submitted the annual secretary board report. So I can bring more light to that in the future, bring more specific to that, because that is an amendment from the transfer that would have occurred and we approved in June, or in our June financial packet.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
All right, anything else on the resolution? Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, that ends the superintendent report.
Okay, is there a special school district report at the
No, we won't meet again for another week or two.
Keith, MSBA update?
Nothing going on, I think.
All right. So our board retreat is on Friday. It shows that it starts at 7 a.m. So you
Yes,
guys
sir.
need to get up early. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought it was
Start at
9.
9.
I went to Brewer Reserve the whole day.
That's what we doing to us.
So 9 o'clock here at the conference center. First day of school, August 27th, and then you can see the next board meetings. Has everyone registered for MSBA for the virtual conference that wants to register?
I have not.
So if you are going to, Kate, are they still accepting registration?
Yeah, I just need to know who wants to come with and sign up yet.
I don't know if I'm gonna have to work, so I don't wanna waste the money of the district if I'm not gonna be able to sit on it, so I won't know until this Friday.
So let me know.
Okay, is there anything else that you need from us?
Chris, did you want to attend?
I'm unavailable.
Okay.
Can you go ahead and sign me up, Kate?
Okay, I'll double check. Yeah, I will.
As the newest board member, you're supposed to represent all of us in every session. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that
We
offline.
need to get Chris his swag.
We do.
He needs his trousers, please. I wore mine in the
He's got a. Good point.
All right, well, that ends our open meeting, and we need a motion to adjourn to closed session for the reasons stated in our agenda.
I move that we adjourn and move into closed session for the reasons stated.
Have a roll call vote.
Gail?
Yes.
Louis, Garrett? Chris Bergen?
Yes.
Keith Redenberg?
Yes.
Lindsey Spencer?
Yes.
Terry Russell?
Yes.
Mark Holman?
Mark?
Yes.
Here's my-